Thank you for joining our webinar. We will get started with the presentation in just a few minutes. Thank you. Thank you again for joining our virtual event. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please use the question section on the control panel and we will answer your questions at the end of the presentation. Now I'd like to hand over the presentation to our hosts, Joe, Al, and Mike.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining today, as Jamie had mentioned. So we're going to take you through the landscape of business critical SAP applications from a SUSE perspective, and hopefully update you all on some important information that you can take back to your work. We'll begin with just a quick introduction to SUSE before I hand things off to Mike and Al. So Al, you can go ahead and advance the slides, please. So SUSE is establishing our long-term 30+ year ethos and history of providing choice to our customers into the marketplace. I'll go ahead and advance the slide. What that means is our mission is to bring the infinite potential of open source to the enterprise. And the real takeaway here is that when we say open source, we mean open source. Open source should be an empowering factor for organizations to build their applications, run their applications, manage their applications, secure their applications, however they may want, with as few vendor limitations as possible. And we want to give customers the ability to leverage the community to advance their individual mission and increase shareholder value for their organization. Please advance. As I said, we've been around for 30+ years. We're approaching our 30-year anniversary. SUSE released the first ever enterprise Linux distribution back in the year 2001. As you can see, we have tens of thousands of customers, have the highest levels of security certification, common criteria in SALSA. We are ESG conscious, and we play in all verticals, but you see we do very well in the regulated industries. Please advance. So how are we going to market? We're looking at our 4 strengths, and we're working as a team and also through our very broad collection of go-to-market resell, cloud, hardware, software partners to take that message of change across our expertise in Linux, cloud native technologies, edge computing, and also AI. Please advance. So the highlights, we're not going to go into very much detail here, but just give you all a really quick introduction of what the highlights are of these 4 go-to-market pillars. The first is multi-Linux support. SUSE is able to save your organization a significant amount of money by becoming your Linux support vendor. No matter what distribution you are running, we'll go ahead and take on support for your entire Linux estate. There's no swapping out of technology. Continue to run your existing Linux distribution. And outside the SAP landscape, by the way, there's an opportunity to have SUSE take over support of all your Linux at a significant cost savings. Again, there's no swapping out technology. Continue to use those applications, invest in modernization rather than migration. Please advance. Oh, I just talked about that, so you can go ahead. Just highlights that we're keeping the existing Linux distribution that you have in place, and we've been supporting Linux for the enterprise for over 20 plus years. Go ahead and advance, Al. Thank you. SUSE Rancher Prime is our cloud native offering. So in 2020, SUSE acquired Rancher. Rancher is by far the #1 downloaded and utilized Kubernetes container management solution in the market today. It is very popular in the enterprise. We do business with the largest banks, the largest pharmaceutical companies, and also the mid-market. So very wide use, and it all is about choice, where a lot of our competition offers an opinionated or much more opinionated management platform for their container environments. SUSE offers world-class interoperability, enabling the customer, like I said before, build their applications and run them and deploy them the way they want to. We also offer a virtualization solution within our cloud native stack. So we enable the enterprise to save a lot of money by consolidating their tools that support their applications into the cloud native ecosystem and get the efficiencies from cloud native, centralize your tools, and run your VMs like containers. Please advance. Go ahead. We offer the whole stack. Sorry, I forgot that I gave an extra slide here for each one of these because I do want to get to the SAP content. But everything comes shipped out of the box, even though we offer a full stack ready to go. Go ahead and start building your applications with the green boxes you see on top to run on top of Rancher. We allow our customers, as I highlighted a few times, to use the storage of their choice, use the security of their choice. You can advance, please, Al. And we are recognized as a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. Please advance. And what is very interesting in today's market is the announcement from SAP that they will be end-of-lifing PIPO in 2027. And a lot of organizations that run SAP, and it's important to their business, especially that data integration piece, are using this as an opportunity to get in early on SAP's new solution for that, which is Edge Integration Cell. So really, the enterprise is going to be able to, with a Kubernetes container environment, deploy Edge Integration Cell and get more out of their data and start operating more agile as it relates to their data coming from the other SAP cloud apps and third-party apps, so that we can all take advantage of the data-rich economy that we're in. We'll go into this a little bit more in the presentation. Al, if you would just advance, please. SUSE Edge, go ahead and advance. We want to bring a very modular solution that is fully open source and customizable to the market for Edge modernization. Here are the verticals we focus on. Al, if there's another slide on Edge, please advance. If not, you can stick here. What our goal is with the Edge story is to provide zero-touch provisioning, so that application teams and operation teams can go ahead and deploy applications, deploy devices to remote areas with no technical skill needed in that remote area. So zero-touch provisioning and security are the top topics here. Please advance. And our last topic is AI. Everybody's trying to take advantage of AI, and it's all about data. So go ahead and advance out. SUSE offers a platform, which is really Rancher, with integrations into NVIDIA, and also a secure application collection. So if you are already building, or your enterprise is already building chatbots or any other AI functionality in the enterprise today, we can go ahead and give you a secure supply chain for all those community tools like Milvus, PyTorch, Hugging Face, Olama. The list goes on and on. But being able to offer that secure supply chain, the best-in-class container security from SUSE, and also a platform that allows you to differentiate from your competitors, because unlike most of the market, we do not care what model you bring into your application and your platform, and we don't care where you run it. And limitations in those two aspects can have you building AI that looks a lot like your competition. So SUSE offers a differentiation in how you go to market and how you take advantage and how rapidly you can adopt AI, and not to mention securely. Alan, I think there might be one more wrap-up slide, or we're going to Mike, I believe. Yep, there's a choice, security, and trust that we focus on for all of our solutions. And I'm positive that is the last slide, Mike. So why don't you go ahead and take it away.
Good stuff, Joe. Thanks for going over that. And I appreciate everybody's attention there. We did want to put that in. It's almost a commercial at the front here. So we'll move on to the SAP topic now. And thanks for everybody who joined to hear this part. SUSE has been a long-time partner of SAP's, of course. We're a customer of SAP's. They're a customer of ours. And I think it's important that we highlight that in this world where there's lots of players, we continue to be partners with all of your deployment platforms as well. So whether you're deployed on public cloud, whether you've got on-premises hardware, your relationships with an HPE, a Dell, an IBM, a Lenovo, we're certainly there and ready to support those environments. And don't even view that as legacy. That's where some new deployments are going. We see that too. And over in the area of system integrators and MSPs, there's a lot going on in that space, and we're increasingly working hand in hand with these companies, especially to take care of the integration stuff that Joe touched on. And we'll get to that, more of that in a minute. But I did want to point out that, as it says here, your partners for your infrastructure projects on SAP are exactly our partners. Go ahead and advance that, please.
Okay, so it's my turn.
Yeah, go ahead. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I want to take you through some of the technologies that SUSE provides for SAP customers. Pretty much everything I'm going to talk about here is included with SLES for SAP, with the exception of one or two, and I'll point them out when I get to them. But I have a long history with SAP since 1995. Been working in a pre-sales technical type of role, everything from worldwide support to certification benchmarking and so on and so on. So I've seen a lot of changes over the year, and SAP continues to make some really, really great products, and it's a great area to be working in. What I want to just mention here, it's not just bragging rights. I was there working in Germany when the Linux Lab opened, and SUSE was the first ones there and continued to be a big presence there. And some of the benefits that have come out of that is the fact that SUSE is the development platform for SAP. So all SAP applications that run on Linux are developed on SUSE Linux. And so why is that beneficial to SAP customers? Because let's say, for example, when a new version of HANA comes out, it's already been burned in and tested and put through the ringer, basically, prior to going GA. So when it does go GA, it should be rock solid and work as planned with no surprises. I will just mention this one other benefit here for SAP and both SUSE as well. SAP also runs their business on SUSE Linux, and so they are a reference customer, which they don't do that lightly because they work with a lot of vendors. And so to point one out in particular and become a reference customer, it is kind of a big deal. I've not seen it much in the 30+ years I've been working in the SAP space. So tens of thousands of customers, SAP customers run on SUSE, and a lot of this is, okay, great. But what I find most compelling on this slide is that SAP HANA installations that run on IBM Power, 95% of those customers choose SUSE to run their SAP workload on IBM Power, knowing full well that I'm sure that isn't the first preference for the IBM folks. Naturally they want to run it on the Linux distribution that they provide, and yet 95% of the customers choose to run it on SUSE Linux. I'm not going to go through all this. I'll just leave you with these slides. This just shows some of the key differences in support and the longevity of support that we give our SAP customers, including extended service pack support for SLES for SAP. And why we do that is because we know that SAP customers don't want to put a new service pack on every 6 months, right? It's mission critical. SAP is typically the most important workload in a customer's data center. You don't want to be putting a service pack on every 6 months. So we give extended service pack support to our SLES for SAP distribution. What I do want to mention here is a lot of customers ask, okay, what's the difference between SLES for SAP and regular SLES? So that's kind of outlined here. And on the left-hand side, what I'm really going to go into with these bullet points is the one that's just kind of mentioned on the bottom left, and that's the SAP workload specific tooling, which is pretty much everything I'm going to talk about from here on to the to almost the end of the presentation. So let's start with our service packs. Right now we're SLES 15 SP6. SLES 16 will be coming out very soon, and it's going to be very different. There is a lot of code that no longer belongs in a 2025 operating system, a lot of old code that's going to be stripped out. But there's also going to be a specific release for SAP. And so you say, okay, what's the difference? There's already a SLES for SAP. Today's SLES for SAP is regular SLES at its core. And then we add some specific tooling on top of that. We include the high availability resource agents and some other tuning software and things like that. But at its core, it's SLES. The difference is SLES 16, anything not required to run SAP is going to be stripped out. So it's going to be, there's going to be a very specific version for SAP. And the fact that only what is required to run SAP is going to be included with that distribution, I expect to see a lot less chances for vulnerabilities and better performance. And so because 16 is going to be very different, we decided to add a Service Pack 7 to SLES 15. So prior, we were going to stop it at SP6, but again, we know how important SAP is to customers, and we're going to give you plenty of time to test this new version 16 coming out. Give you the ability to stay on 15 as long as you want to, basically to 2037. So you can continue to run SLES 15 with Service Pack 7 up until 2037. And there's some reasons for 2037, and if you Google that, you'll see why. It has to do with binary code, where we actually can't go past that, and not just us, other application developers as well. But anyway, 2037 gives you a very long time to stay with SLES 15 if you choose to, and give you plenty of time to test SLES 16. And here's the timeline. I'm not going to go over this. I basically just talked about this. So let's continue on. If you are running SLES 12, for SAP, you can see that it went from general support to LTSS back in October of last year. And so, oops, I did not mean to go to that slide. So if you're on SLES 12, then that means you're going to have to go from general support to LTSS for additional support. So these are kind of all the areas that SUSE plays when it comes to SAP: auto tuning, high availability, pre-hardened images, security hardened images. We have SUSE Multi-Linux Manager. We have live patching and some good validation and monitoring tools that we provide for SAP customers. And I'm going to go into all these points one at a time here. So let's start with security. So a report came out recently, even though you see here that we see there's been a 5x jump in ransomware attacks targeting SAP systems since 2021. And when you think about what's in an SAP system, customer data, master data, all of your sales data, HR, that's a hacker's dream to break into an SAP system and get all that data or keep that data, for ransom basically. So what do we do here in terms of security? We're really serious about security at SUSE. So we're the only general purpose operating system that's EAL4 plus certified. We have SIS and STIG security hardened cloud images, pre-hardened images that you can just use right out of the box. They're already hardened, and we provide plenty of documentation for you to harden on-premise SUSE Linux operating system as well to keep your system as secure as possible. And speaking of security, we have the ability with SUSE Linux to now live patch the Linux kernel without requiring a reboot for pretty much 99% of the kernel patches that come out anymore. So it's got to be something really, really severe that changes the structure of the kernel, for example, for it to require a reboot these days. So 99% of them anymore do not require a reboot. So you can patch the kernel and the patch takes effect immediately. And then we just ask that you reboot your system. We give you up to a year without requiring a reboot. So think about HANA, think about how long it takes to reboot the system. Like again, you can now patch the kernel without requiring a reboot. And we've also recently added some user space libraries with glibc and OpenSSL. And we chose those two to start with because of the dependency of HANA. And again, this is all about HANA, the length of time it takes to reboot, and the SLAs, that HANA requires to keep your business running. So again, kernel patches, OpenSSL and glibc, you can patch these without rebooting the system for up to a year. And again, they take effect immediately when you do these patches. And so using live kernel patching and user space patching together with something like our SUSE Multi-Linux Manager has some great benefits to SAP customers. So what we're showing here is with the lifecycle management capabilities of SUSE Linux Manager, you can build packages of CVE updates and patches, for example, and bundle them together and apply them all at once to your, as we show here, your dev system. And then when it checks out, you push that same package onto QA and then onto prod, kind of like what you do with R3 Trans in the SAP environment with the SAP fixes and your Z programs, for example. And so the reason why this is so popular with SAP customers is it has a filtering option within SUSE Multi-Linux Manager that allows you to, for example, filter out all the CVEs that do require a reboot. So you can build a package, say, okay, let's have all the CVEs that don't require a reboot. Let's package them all together and push them through the SAP landscape, one at a time here. And so, like I said, using the filtering options, you can do that, and then you could build a package for all the ones that do require a reboot, and then schedule that during your normal maintenance downtime. So again, this is all about SLAs, having as few reboots as possible to not disrupt your SAP applications that customers need to run day to day. And I mentioned SUSE, it used to be called SUSE Manager. We've since changed the name to SUSE Multi-Linux Manager because SUSE Manager kind of insinuated that it was just for SUSE Linux, but as you can see here, it's not the case. So SUSE Multi-Linux Manager can pretty much manage all the popular Linux distributions out there, like Oracle Linux and CentOS and Alma Linux, Rocky Linux, Red Hat Linux, Ubuntu, and so on and so on. So now some of the features I want to talk about that we included with SLES for SAP. And if you're running the SLES for SAP distribution and you don't know about these things that we've integrated, these are really important things to know. So this was a problem that SAP actually had, where if the index server in HANA had an issue, it could take a very long time for the service to fail completely. For example, a 24 terabyte system, it could take the index server almost an hour and a half to fail completely. And during that time, HANA is unavailable. And so there's no reason that a failover shouldn't occur as soon as the index server has an issue. And so we've integrated a hook into SLES for SAP where this hook will be immediately notified if the index server has a problem, if the index server crashes, and it will trigger a failover. So instead of waiting an hour and a half for this service to fail completely, or let's say a smaller system, 16 terabyte, 10 terabyte, 8 terabyte, they could take a half hour, 45 minutes for this index server to crash completely. With this hook that we've integrated in the SLES for SAP, the system will be notified immediately that the index server had a problem and will trigger a failover, greatly increasing your SLAs. So, some of the other things here that benefit the SAP landscape, and especially when it comes to data integrity, there was an issue before where the HANA cockpit operator has no idea of the cluster of the HANA cluster, for example. And so the HANA cockpit operator could initiate a failover of the HANA database before it's actually in the correct mode to fail over. So the cluster needs to be either maintenance mode or stop before you trigger a failover. And if you do trigger a failover when it's not in one of those two modes, you could have data integrity issues and corrupt your database. And so what we've integrated into SLES for SAP is another hook where the HANA cockpit operator, if they go to fail the cluster over and the cluster is not in maintenance mode or stop, they will be blocked from failing the cluster over, and they will get a message on their display saying that the cluster could not fail over because it's not in the correct mode. Again, this is all about data integrity to make sure that the cluster doesn't fail over when it shouldn't be failed over and avoid database corruption. And now on to database corruption possibilities for the ABAP Central Services. So we've implemented a new way of doing the clustering for the ABAP Central Services. So prior to this, what we call simple mount architecture. The old way it worked was the cluster software was in charge of failing over to the surviving cluster node. And sometimes the issue there was the shared file systems, the old way was mount on the primary node, not on the secondary node. And so what would happen during a failover was the cluster software would try to unmount the shared file system required for the secondary node to run. The cluster software was in charge of unmounting those file systems and mounting them on the surviving node. And so what was the problem with that? Well, sometimes when the primary node is failing, the cluster software could not gracefully unmount the file systems. So it would do a force unmount, which is something you never want to do. You never want to do a force unmount of a file system to mount on another node because data corruption could occur. So we've actually changed the architecture. We call it simple mount, where we have a new resource agent called SAP Start Serve. And that resource agent is in charge of failing over the cluster software. And the way it works is the shared file systems are now mounted on both cluster nodes at system boot. So during a failover, the SAP Start Serve resource agent, all it has to do is switch over to the secondary node. The file systems, the shared file systems are already mounted on the secondary node. So the failover is much cleaner and much faster. And again, this is all to avoid the old way where the cluster software would unmount, sometimes using the force unmount option to mount those file systems on the surviving cluster node. One of the other tools that we've implemented with SLES for SAP is SAP Tune. And this is a really great tool for your OS, your SAP OS administrators. So what this tool does is it allows you to apply the SAP notes to your specific system, sometimes in reaction if you have a problem or trying to be proactive. And so the way it used to work before was, you're running your SAP system, you see an issue, and so what do? You go to the SAP knowledge base and you start searching through all these SAP notes, trying to get a hit on what your specific problem is. And once you find the note, sometimes it's very vague. Sometimes one note leads to another and leads to another, leads to another, and it can be very confusing. So SAP Tune actually does that for you. So via bottom line command, you can run SAP Tune on your system, and we support NetWeaver, HANA, BobJ, pretty much all the popular SAP applications. If you run SAP Tune and you say, for example, SAP Tune HANA running on AWS, it will show you all the SAP notes that are applicable to your system, and you could bottom line command and apply them all at the same time. So some of the important features of that we recently added was platform tagging. So kind of like the example I just gave, the reason why we added platform tagging was so that for example, I gave the example of running in Azure. So it allows you to say, okay, I'm running SAP HANA, I'm running on Azure, I'm running on the Intel platform. So make sure you get only the SAP notes that are applicable to that system, or any general notes as well. So the reason why we did that was we didn't want to see a customer applying a SAP note that's specific to GCP or AWS, for example, when you're running in Azure, or a note that's specific to a cloud provider and you're running on premises. So we give you the ability to platform tag exactly what you have to make sure you get the exact SAP notes for your particular system. Some choices here now when it comes to virtualization. So we've listened to our customers. We did a lot of work on this very quickly. It was actually first supported back in November of last year. We heard our customers. We heard there's a lot of churn in the VMware environment. Some of the customers aren't happy with the price changes. I'm not here to bash VMware. It's a very good product, but now you have some choices. So now SUSE KVM for Linux is now fully supported for HANA in a production environment, up to 8 terabytes for transactional and 4 terabytes for analytical systems. And keep your eye on these two notes, because we will continue to add features as we go along. So for example, when it first came out last November, it started like VMware did, where we only allowed one virtual machine per virtualization host. So now, as you can see, we can do single and multiple HANA virtual machines on the same KVM host. And we now have socket spanning like we didn't have before. So we continue to add features. So now you have some choices when it comes to virtualizing HANA. The application server tier has always been supported on KVM. It was HANA that was not supported prior to this, and now we have full support for KVM in the HANA production environment. And so now we're going to talk a little bit more about Edge Integration Cell that Joe mentioned during his presentation. This is really one of the first things to come out with SAP when it comes to Kubernetes and containers, and I expect there's going to be a lot more coming in the very near future. So a lot of customers out there aren't running Kubernetes. It's a good idea to get started with it, because like I said, this is the first of many products to come that will support containers. And so, why did they come out with this, and why in a container environment? So it was really about the integration of SAP and non-SAP applications, which we did have with SAP Integration Suite. So you have customers typically have a mixture of one or all these different data sources coming in, right? Cloud applications, on-premises applications, social networks, mobile apps, so on and so on. So Integration Suite gave you the ability to meld that data together and work on it as a customer saw fit. And so this was a great use case for Kubernetes. So, because basically the premise behind Edge Integration Cell, it's a hybrid integration runtime environment that does run in a container. So in general, there's no reason why companies can't pull data from the cloud into your private landscape, but they can't do the opposite. So since there could be some data that they can't put into the cloud the opposite way for regulatory purposes or security purposes, how do you combine that with on-premise? How do you combine that on-premise restricted data together with data in the cloud for different reasons? So that's really the whole purpose of Edge Integration Cell. It allows you to, kind of test and manage and test APIs, run integration scenarios, and in general, work with combined cloud and on-premise data within your private landscape. And so what's missing typically when it comes to Kubernetes? There's security vulnerabilities, observability, and whatnot. So we've actually come out with SUSE Rancher for SAP applications. And so it's a bundle of software that will help with some of those things I just mentioned. So it includes SUSE Linux Micro, Rancher Prime for Kubernetes, Rancher Application Collection, the repository monitoring tool, SUSE Security, which was formerly called NuVector, Observability, formerly called Stack State, and virtualization. So we kind of bundled all this software together to help you run your Kubernetes environments in a secure fashion with observability that wasn't actually there prior. So it's called SUSE Rancher for SAP applications, and any customer that would like to see a demo of Rancher, we'd be happy to do that in the near future on a customer by customer basis. And the same with Trento. So this is actually a somewhat new product. It's probably been around a little bit less than a year. And so this is actually included with SLES for SAP. So it's included with, if you have a SLES for SAP license, basically you're entitled to this product and to support with just your SLES for SAP license. And so the reason why we came out with this product was because support, not just our support, but Microsoft Azure support, Amazon support, all the SAP support providers were getting inundated with calls about specifically the SAP clusters not failing over as expected. HANA clusters, ABAP Central Services clusters. There's a lot that has to be set correctly for the failover to occur cleanly and as expected when the time comes. And so what happens, right? When you install the HANA cluster, for example, there's dozens and dozens of parameters that have to be set correctly. They're critical. And so when you install the cluster, the installation software does that for you, right? So, and then it does all those parameters for you, and you test it prior to going GA, and everything works great. It fails over as expected. And then what happens? Service packs get put on, updates get made to the system, change get made to the system, and then all of a sudden, 6 months later, when a failure does occur, the HANA cluster doesn't fail over as expected, as it was tested, or the ABAP Central Services, for example. So we came out with this tool, and it's basically, it's a web console, and it provides a single point of entry for the SAP administrators to monitor and check all those parameters that I mentioned that have to be set correctly for the cluster to fail over correctly when the time comes. And so what it does is it's a client server type of environment. So there's a Trento server that can be set up. It can either run a container or it can be set up via, traditional way with RPM. And it literally, once the operating system installed, it takes less than 5 minutes to install the Trento server. And then there's an agent piece that goes on the SAP servers, very lightweight, blessed by SAP, and a couple of ports, HTTP, HTTPS, and the advanced message queuing port. Once that's open, the Trento agents that are running on the SAP servers will start reporting back almost immediately. And so what it does is auto discovers the SAP systems and clusters, because the agent actually looks into the SAP profiles. And so it knows how the systems are connected together. It knows which SAP application servers are connected to which additional app servers, and which of all those application servers are connected to which particular database, for example. And so it knows how the landscape is laid out. And then it also will give you a deeper dive into the system. So for example, here you see in the top box here, we have an SAP server landscape, and it knows the roles of the server. It knows who the primary ABAP Central Services server is with the message and the enqueue process. It knows who has the enqueue replicated table. It knows the application servers that are connected to that landscape. And it also knows which databases are also connected to that particular those particular application servers. And so then in the bottom there, you see the clusters, and you see that there's two that have a critical parameter that's out of spec. And so you can actually go and look at that parameter, and it will tell you not only what the problem is, but it'll tell you how to fix it. So it shows here the CoroSync timeout is set to the expected value, which it's not. And if you clicked on that, it would show you actually, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to advance the slide. It will actually show you what the problem is and how to fix it. And there are dozens of these parameters that it's checking for CoroSync, for pacemaker, for the operating system, to make sure that both cluster nodes have the same notes, SAP notes applied. Make sure the etc host file is consistent across the board. Dozens of parameters it will check for you. And as you can see here, it shows the provider is Azure. We also support GCP, AWS, VMware, on-premises, pretty much any other provider you can think of for SAP applications. And so it's critical that we support those providers in particular, because those checks could be different for Azure than they are for on-premises, for example. So timeout parameters specifically will be different, because VMs tend to boot a lot faster than physical hardware, because the virtualization host already went through and did all those checks prior to you launching your SAP VMs. And so again, you can have a mixture of providers. You can have some in Azure, some on-premise. We support all of that. And so again, it will show you if a parameter is out of spec, and not only it will flag an error for it, it will tell you how to fix it if you click on that error. And we also recently integrated it with SAP Tune. So I mentioned SAP Tune before, the ability to apply via bottom line command SAP notes to your particular system. So within the web console for Trento, it will show you, as you can see here in the lower box, it will show you the enabled solution for SAP Tune, and also the notes that you had applied to that particular system. And those are links. So for example, you applied note 1771256. If you click on that, it will actually take you to the SAP knowledge base and show you what that note is in detail. So we've integrated it recently with SAP Tune, and we've also integrated it with SUSE Manager. So I mentioned, SUSE Manager having the ability to, bundle up CVEs, for example, and apply them to your systems. Also with Trento, it will show you, as you can see here in that bottom box, it will show you if there are any relevant patches to that particular server. And so if you click on the relevant patches, it would show you a list of the patches that should be applied, and the upgrade packages there you can see on the right. And you can actually click on the CVEs that it wants you to apply to the system, and it will take you to the website that will show you exactly what that CVE is. If any of the customers out there want to see a live demo of Trento, I'd be happy to do that for you. We have a very large SAP landscape with scale up HANA clusters, scale out HANA clusters, ABAP central services clusters, primary app servers, additional app servers, servers with the Java stack. We have all that we can go through with Trento to your SAP team. We'd love to do a live demo of this tool. And again, include it with your SLES for SAP license at no additional cost. So, I'm kind of wrapping up here. As you can see, we consistently lead in innovation for SAP systems. Some of these tools like Trento, for example, we came out with, we just gave it to the SAP customers that are running SLES for SAP at no additional cost. And some of the other tools that you've seen here gives great benefits to our SAP customers to help with data integrity, and also to keep your systems up to date and running healthy. And I think that's it for me. And again, these are all the things that we touched on during the presentation. And so now I guess we can go to see if there are any questions.
Yeah, so we have one question, and it is, will SUSE be at Sapphire next month?
Yes, not only will we be at Sapphire, Mike and I on this call will both be there as well. We'll have some good sessions. We'll have a Trento demo. If you want to stop by the SUSE booth, we can do one-on-one or group demonstrations of the software, and we'd love to meet you there. Yes, we will be a sponsor of Sapphire, and we'll be there.
Well, let me chime in there too, Al. First, thanks for everyone's attention, and thanks for that presentation, Al. Not only will we be at Sapphire, but I know that a lot of your organizations don't send a whole collection of people, maybe one or two executives or a couple of practitioners. We'd be happy to present any of this stuff to your teams individually outside of Sapphire as well. So let me make that invitation. We typically make a unique presentation for Sapphire. We'll share that on request as well. So again, thank you. If anybody has any other questions, just come online now if you can, or type them into the question box on the tool here, or feel free to connect with either Al or me or Joe after this. My email address, if you can use me as a collector, is mike.nelson, Nelson, @SUSE.com. Thanks so much.